Hello and welcome back to the Simon and Friends podcast on YouTube. Today I am going to be continuing our mini series here, recapping the NFL draft with our best and worst picks at X position. Today I'm doing the offensive line and I'm running solo for this. Otherwise it'd be a half hour long. So let's get right down to it. My best and worst offensive line picks from the 2024 NFL draft. Starting at the top, best pick, Joe Alt, Chargers, round one, pick 5. Jim Harbaugh's Chargers want to set the tone in the trenches. Harbaugh has called the offensive line a number of glowing things, such as the tip of the spear of the offense, and the only position that everyone relies on that doesn't rely on anyone else. So there's no question they were going O-line here. What I particularly love about this pick is they took the best offensive tackle in the draft. Trade value and questions about which side does he play on be damned. It was popular to mock that the Chargers trade back with the Vikings, losing out on Joe Alt and maybe a second tackle, and taking a more natural right tackle instead, maybe a JC Latham at 11 overall. This move would have made sense considering the depth at the position and the draft haul they could have maybe gotten. And Rashawn Slater is already a top 5 left tackle in the NFL. But instead, they didn't get cute. They are betting on the consensus and my personal, for whatever that's worth, offensive tackle one, who has the traits and athleticism to switch to right tackle and be a dominant force in both the run and pass game, which is good because while Harbaugh likes to run the ball, the Chargers still have a top 5 quarterback in Justin Herbert that they want to allow to win them big games in big moments and maybe save a few more ribs and lungs from being punctured and broken along the way. My second offensive line pick that I really liked in this draft, and I have to be a bit of a homer here, it's Troy Fontenot from the University of Washington going to the Steelers in round one at pick 20. I have to do this. Fontenot was my O-line 2 this year in the draft, tackle, guard, whatever you want to call him. I view him as a tackle, but second best offensive lineman overall in the draft for me, and was widely considered to be a top 10 player overall in this draft. Fanu may lack the typical height of an offensive tackle, but he has the required length and elite athleticism to make up for it. And don't let the profile fool you. He has a nasty and physical demeanor and is just as brutal as they come as a blocker. The Steelers were able to sit and pick at 20th overall to take Fontenot and get him as the sixth offensive lineman off the board. Like Alt, I think Fontenot has the profile to switch sides and play right tackle if the team wants to move Broderick Jones over to left tackle, who was last year's first round pick. And that's his natural position as well. And it might benefit the team for Fontenot to be the one moved as a guy that I think is a little more ready made, a little more refined, and I think would make the move a little bit more naturally. Fontenot plays with the physicality and passion Pittsburgh is looking for as they transition back to the Steelers of old, wanting to run the ball and grind their opponents to dust. And it helps that Troy Polamalu was his favorite player growing up and he was a Steeler fan. And then finally, my final pick, that was my favorite offensive line pick from the 2024 NFL Draft, Jackson Powers Johnson, Raiders, going in the second round, pick 44 overall. I'm so proud of the Raiders in this draft, and I particularly love the JPJ fit for them. Powers Johnson was my interior O lineman one in this draft, whether you're looking at center or guard or both in totality. His size and physicality is on display in the run game, and it gives him a great anchor in pass protection. He slipped to the second round, and the Raiders nabbed him at 44 overall. Powers Johnson will be a great fit for the physical brand of football the Raiders are leaning into under head coach Antonio Pierce. And he was drafted to play guard, probably on the right side, but I think is going to be this team's starting center, if not by 2025, 2026 at the absolute latest when the team moves on from Andre James. But he's got the versatility and experience to do both. So I see him being a day one starter at right guard. Now let's move over to my least favorite picks on the offensive line in the 2024 draft. And this is hard because I always appreciate when a team invests in the trenches, specifically offensive line, and it's a particularly good crop of offensive linemen. So I never want to discourage a team from making the pick or seem like I don't like it. But here it goes anyways. My first offensive line pick that I didn't love in this draft was Olu Fashanu going to the Jets in the first round, pick 11 overall. And I'm not a fan of the Jets taking an offensive lineman here at all. I was in the camp of them taking a pass catcher early in the draft to help their all-in approach for a Super Bowl this year. And before you tell me they need to protect Rodgers to make that happen, I'll say using a first-round pick to protect from injuries is not good roster management. Is it the smart and forward-thinking approach? Yes. Was Fashanu the third-rated tackle on my board? Absolutely. But now he's relegated to swing tackle duties until someone is hurt long-term. That means instead of him waiting and getting going in and getting maximum reps at one position to learn and develop, he's splitting time between two sides and will sporadically be playing, which from a muscle memory standpoint could potentially hurt his confidence as well, and it could stunt his development overall. If he goes in one game at left tackle, doesn't play well, doesn't play for 5 weeks, then plays at right tackle, doesn't play well, that might not be the best development path for him. If Fashanu ends up not developing to his potential and doesn't get a big rookie extension with the Jets, let's look at his snap count from 2023 and see if there's maybe a correlation. Next pick I didn't love was Jordan Morgan going to the Packers in the first round, pick 25 overall. It's another pick I didn't like, not having anything to do with the player himself. I'm a big fan of Jordan Morgan. I viewed him as a borderline first round pick. But I view this as the Packers are so good at drafting and developing day three offensive linemen that why did they do this in the first round? Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, Royce Newman, John Brennan Jr., all names of mid to late round picks by the Packers that have played good snaps for them recently. It was certainly time for this team to replenish the cupboard after making no picks on the line last year, but they still did their typical draft multiple day three offensive linemen in Jacob Monk at center and Travis Glover at tackle/guard. So I didn't love them taking a guy in the first round, plus sticking to their usual MO and drafting guys on day three. Bypassing Morgan in round one would have allowed them to pick a potentially impactful player at another position in the first round. I do think Morgan will end up being a good player for them, but how much better will he be than someone they took in the third round and someone like Cooper DeJean that they could have had in the first round? I'm not so sure. And finally, the last offensive line pick that I didn't love in the 2024 draft is the Washington Commanders, taking Brandon Coleman in the third round. Again, this has little to do with Brandon Coleman and much more with the team and their approach to the draft. The Commanders still don't have a starting caliber tackle on their roster to protect second overall pick Jayden Daniels. In a Washington Post article by Stephen Wino, GM Adam Peters said he tried to make calls to trade back into the first round, but was unable to do so before the run on tackles happened. My question is, how is that possible? The Chiefs traded picks 32, 95, and 221 to go to 28 overall, which was before the Cowboys took Tyler Guyton. The Lions traded 29 and 73 to go to 24, before the Packers took Jordan Morgan. Maybe you can convince me teams didn't want to trade out of the first round altogether, but the Commanders had the resources to make the Godfather offer that I think would have been hard to pass, especially since the Bills traded out of the first round altogether. Then there's the second round, where the Commanders made 3 picks, 2 on the defensive side of the ball, where Washington spent the majority of its money in free agency, by the way. And on the board for each of those second round selections was Patrick Paul, Blake Fisher, Roger Rosengarten, and Kingsley Suamataia. Yes, they got good players with who they did draft, but is this regime going to prioritize adding to their defense over protecting their second overall pick quarterback? That doesn't seem very promising for Washington. Maybe Coleman becomes a franchise left tackle. Passing on a high investment at the position and waiting until 67 overall and just seeing who fell to you is bad management of an extremely important position. All right, that's been my video on the offensive line. Nice and quick for you guys. Make sure you are following the Simon and Friends podcast and subscribe and like this video here on YouTube. Make sure you are checking out the audio version, Simon and Friends podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, and Box Score Network. Follow us and all of our shows at B Score Network on Twitter. Check all those guys out as well. We really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you guys checking out this video. Make sure you see the other ones. We have a couple other positions up and more going up shortly. So thank you all so much. Have fun and be safe out there.